Welcome to After Effects. First of all, before we go into After Effects, just check out my little folder for this project, After Effects Demo. I have a folder of pictures, 2 different folders of pictures inside of the main AE Pics folder. And I have a few videos in here that we can pull in and play with. So this is not so much a tutorial as it is a series of visual reminders that will help you remember the lecture that I gave on After Effects. So let's open it up, and here we are. We're also going to make a new composition, and a composition is basically like a sequence. Okay, we'll call it Comp 1, that looks good. 1920 by 1080, that's good. 24 frames a second, great. Make sure this is at 24. And right now the duration is 30 seconds. That's great for this demo. Hit OK. And now here's my composition up here. If I double click it, nothing happens. That's because there's nothing in the composition yet. Let's import some stuff. First way to do that would be File, Import, File, or alternately we can just double click on this window and the Import File window comes up. Let's navigate to the correct folder. Okay, After Effects Pics. So we're going to do an image sequence here. And it works just the same way as in Premiere. So you click on the first photo or any photo in the sequence, and sometimes there's an option button down here. Make sure that you hit option and then hit import JPEG sequence right here. And then hit open, and now you have a nice image sequence. So the only problem is that After Effects automatically creates image sequences at 30 frames a second. So we're going to change that. You're going to control click or right click on this sequence, and then you're going to hit interpret footage main. Down here, click assume frame rate, and then you're going to change it to 12 probably if you're working on the 2s. I'm going to change it to 24, but that's my personal preference. This is not to say you'll still be working at a frame rate of 24 frames per second in your general project, but this is specifically for this image sequence. So you might want to work on the 2s. Another cool thing you can do with interpreting footage is you can tell it to loop. So we're going to loop this 5 times. Okay, and you can see it's been changed to 24 frames a second. Let's drag it down onto our sequence, and you can tell here's the beginning of our workable area. Here's the end. If we want to shorten the length of our work area, we can just drag this end of work area. So this is our footage looped 5 times. You can shorten it by doing this, and this grayed out area means that there's still more footage available. There's a tail left on it, but it's not being shown at the moment. So if we hit play, which is the space bar, you'll see that the computer is kind of rendering my walk cycle. Let me hit pause because this is way too zoomed in. So in order to zoom out, you're going to click on your image here and then hit Command minus, Command minus. Okay, so now we can see, here's our viewfinder. In order to shrink this down quickly, you can click on the corner, hit Shift, and then drag it in. That will keep your aspect ratio nice and steady. We're going to go ahead and make this even smaller than we're going to make this like that size. And it's okay that we have some space on the side because ultimately we're going to green screen this out anyway. Okay, Command plus to bring us closer in. And first thing we're going to do is key green out. So let's go over to Effects and Presets, Keying, and we're going to grab Key Light right here. And we can drag it either onto this or this. And then you see the Effects Control panel shows up over here. First, let's kind of make let's make the area that we have to green screen a little smaller with the pen tool. So we're just going to click around the boundaries like this. So the green screening is a little bit less of a process. That gets rid of most of our green screen, and then for the rest of it, next to screen color, I'm going to grab this little eyedropper right here, and let's grab a green. Oh, that did very well. So pretty much we got rid of everything. If you need to adjust, let's go under screen matte, and for example, I'm going to raise the black. That gets rid of a little bit more of it. Anyway, you can mess around with how to get a better screen later on. I'm going to hit the selection tool, and now we've got our guy walking, and he's on our clear background, transparent background. Okay, let's get some more stuff in here, like maybe a still. I'm going to double click. Oh, first of all, to get away from the effects control panel and back to the project panel, you can click this arrow, and then there's like a little menu. You can go back to the project. So now you hit the project panel to open up the import file window, and I'm going to scroll back so that under AE Pics, let's, oops, okay. So we're now in the other folder of images, and instead of grabbing the image sequence this time, we're just going to grab one still. So in this case, I would unclick Import JPEG Sequence and then hit Open. And as you can see, this has just the JPEG little icon next to it rather than the image sequence icon. If we pull this on and drag it under this clip, you can see that it's super duper long. That's because it's just a still, no problem. We'll just shorten it and kind of get it out of the way. Now, it's also gigantic, so let's highlight it down here. And then just like before, we're gonna hit Command minus minus to zoom out, and click the corner, hit Shift, and shrink it on down. And that looks good. I like it, I like it. There we go. Okay, and again, Command plus to zoom in. Okay, gorgeous. What else can we do in After Effects? Let me look at my notes real quick. Oh, I know. Okay, so motion. So let's say we want this guy to walk across our screen. And so we've got our image sequence here. We're going to highlight it here. And if you twirl down on the timeline next to this image sequence, you can see that we have places where you can control it, you can keyframe it, and it's very similar to Premiere. So let's go to the beginning of it. And let's say we want to keyframe the position. Anchor point, don't worry about it at this point. It's a little more advanced. Right now we're going to use position and scale. So let's keyframe those on. And oops, so for our first keyframe, I forget, we're going to drag him over here. Hell, what the hell, let's also do opacity. So we've just keyframed all three of these, and then we're going to go push to the end of this, give him more of a background, and then to make more keyframes, we'll drag him over to the end. It automatically creates a new position keyframe. or you can use these sliders to bring it up and down or side to side. For scale, let's keyframe him a little bit smaller. Whoa, actually, oops. We'll just use this scale over here since it's more precise. Keep those linked. And so it's as if he's going forward, and he's also walking out of the frame, and he's also going to lose opacity as he goes through. So let's see what that looks like. Oh, but while we're here, let me click on position. And this shows our motion path from the first keyframe to the last. One really cool thing that we can do is we can grab these handles and it curves our motion path for us. Pretty amazing stuff. You can also lengthen or shorten to get the type of curve you want. Now, these little keyframes, or these dots, represent keyframes. So this shows us not only the motion path, but it also shows us the speed with which those frames are going to go. Here's our guy traveling backwards through time, back to the beginning of our sequence. Pretty cool stuff. Another thing we can do is we're going to look at the graph editor, and I'm going to show you how you can kind of control the timing of this a little more clearly. Okay, so I hit the graph editor right here, and that shows us a couple aspects of what's happening. This is like our x-axis and our y-axis. But we're also going to hit this button which says choose graph type and options, and we want to edit the speed graph. So this shows that our speed is consistent right here at 450 pixels per second, but let's say we slow down the beginning of it so that we start out slower and we go up to a higher speed and then it levels off. You can also control it with these handles. So let's see what that does to our motion path here. This person is going to slow down closer to the keyframes. Let's make it even more extreme so you can really see what's going on. Okay, so towards the end you can see these dots are getting a lot closer together, which means that basically we're going to ease in and ease out of these two motions. Okay, so that's the speed graph editor. Let's turn it off and go back to allow, oops, nope, we want show expression editor. Nope. We just want to turn off the edit speed graph. Okay, and we're going to turn off the graph editor so that we're kind of back to normal. Okay, another interesting thing that happened while we were in there is that these little hourglass, these little caret shapes came up where we used to have keyframes. What that means is that you're easing out of or into the keyframes. Another way you can toggle that on and off is to hover over a keyframe, like scale, for example, right here. And I'm going to hit Control and then click on that, and we're going to scroll down to Keyframe Assistant, and here you can choose Easy Ease in, or Easy Ease out. Easy Ease just gives you an hourglass shape on either side, which means that we're going to ease both in and out of this point, this keyframe. So anyway, it just helps you to get a really nice buoyant quality, almost the way gravity works. So Easy Ease looks great on everything. Okay, so we just learned a lot about how to make keyframes and stuff. Excuse me while I look at my notes. Okay, let's look at how to... Okay, so first of all, let's let this render for a second. Whoops, it's thinking. And the next thing we're going to do is play with some blend modes. In order to do that, let's create a new solid as soon as this is done. Or, well, screw it. Let's just start back here at the beginning. Beautiful. And now it has to think. Okay. File, new, nope. Layer, new, solid. And let's say I don't want a dark gray solid. We would just click the color and I'll make it a bright red solid. Okay. Now you can see, and click OK. Now you can see I've got this solid in my solids folder. And we're going to grab it and drag it. Oh, it's already on the timeline. Great. Thanks, After Effects. I'm going to shorten it. And then, this is very important, we're going to go over to this button that says Toggle Switches and Modes. And you click it, and it changes just about everything that's happening up here. Once you toggle the switches and modes, you have, next to your source name, you have Mode, Track Matte, and Parenting. Right now, we're just going to look at some blending modes. So, next to red solid, it says normal. We're going to scroll down that menu, and there are all these different options of how you can blend this layer with the layer that's underneath it. For example, this is what overlay blend mode looks like. So it simply means that with blend mode, it's blending the red solid with everything that lies beneath it. So anyway, that's kind of weird. Let's turn it off, go back to normal, and let's pull this red solid down to the bottom so that we don't see it for right now. So those are blend modes. Next thing we're going to do, let's twirl these up so we can see what's going on. Image sequence, JPEG, and red. And now we're going to take a look at 3D. So in order to do that, we toggle the switches and modes back to normal. And we've got this little cube right here. Let's toggle 3D on for our image sequence. And for our lips photo, let's leave it turned off. And for our red solid, it's on. So basically, the lips JPEG is going to become our stationary background that's not going to move. And you'll see what I mean more in a moment. Okay, so right now we can only see our, okay, here's a slideshow. Okay, that's better. So sidesies, we've got where we used to have only an x-axis and a z-axis, we have now toggled on 3D, so we have a z-axis, which moves us forward and backwards. If I hover over until it says Z, and then I start moving the mouse to and fro, you see that it draws the dude towards me and away from me. Another way to look at that is you're going to want to do this anyway if you're working in 3D, toggle on the two views, and now we have not only a frontal view of our composition, but we have a view from above. And we're going to click on this and zoom out. Command minus. Okay, now we can see what's going on. This is our guy back here. He's kind of far away from us. If we click this and we grab Z, you can see that he is at this particular keyframe, he's moving away from us. Let's move him towards us so that he's going to veer closer to the quote-unquote camera, and then he's going to veer away. Oops. Okay, we can also grab the red x-axis and go sideways, etc., etc. Another way to control these things is to twirl down our little menu here, and you can see that where we used to have two values for x and y, we now have a third. And we can control it by grabbing it and zooming it like that. So let's see what it looks like. I'm not going to let it render all the way, but you can see that he walks towards the camera and then away from the camera. Okay, beautiful. Now, our red solid, let's make it fly through the air. And let's drag it so that it's on top of the lips background, but it's not, come on now. Oh, gotta grab it here and then drag it above. There we go. Okay, so if I go to the beginning of the red, there you are. Beginning of the red, so what do we want it to do? We want it to start super far away. So I grabbed the blue Z arrow and I'm dragging it. Counterintuitively, I'm dragging the mouse towards me to make it smaller and smaller and smaller. We're going to grab the red arrow and drag this way because we want it to start over here. And let's twirl down the menu next to red solid and the menu next to transform. And let's toggle on the keyframes for position, scale, and orientation is like the same as rotation. So we're gonna, let's say we want to twirl it around the Z axis as it goes. So we just toggle those on. That's our starting point, and now we'll drag it to the end. And we want the red solid to come over to the right. So I grabbed the red arrow and I'm dragging it over. I'll do that again. And again. Sorry, I don't know all the cool shortcuts, guys. I'm going to drag it up and up. And lastly, we'll grab the Z axis and we'll drag it towards us. Whoosh. So it's like becoming huge. And in order to see this go down, we might want to zoom out on the above view. Okay, so here's our red plane right now. Pull it down. Okie dokie. And another thing I wanted to do on top of this keyframe is I want to rotate this Z axis. So okay, so we've got kind of an interesting thing going on here. And one thing you should notice is that lips, because it is, the 3D is not toggled on, there's nothing, it just stays stationary right here. So it's going to fill in your background no matter what. Okay, so we did some really interesting stuff. And stay tuned next time. We're going to learn how to do parenting and null objects and some stuff like that. The last thing you need to know is, let's see, to export, just go File, Export, Add to Render Queue. Oh, first of all, you want to designate where your in and out points are. So you're going to hit I at the beginning, and then I'll drag it to where I want the end to be. Let's say here, I'll hit O. Or drag the work area to right here, rather. Make Make it a little smaller. There we go. Beautiful. Now we're going to hit File, Export, Add to Render Queue. And here's our render queue. Render settings, best settings, that's great. Hit OK. Output module. Click it, and let's see, we've got QuickTime, that's good. Format options. Animation is fine, but to get a little bit of compression so that you have a smaller file, you're going to hit Apple ProRes 422 HQ. It's a very light compression. It's going to be perfect for the web, a lot of other things. All right, hit OK. There was also an option on that last frame to output alpha only, which would give you a transparent background. So that's also an option. And hit OK. And then output to. This tells you, this lets you choose where you would like to render it to. I'm obviously going to navigate over to this folder, and I'll just output it right there. All right, everything looks good. Now I just hit render. And you get the idea. Oh my gosh. School computers will work faster than this, I promise. What a satisfying sound. I changed my mind. I am going to show you a little bit more because why not? Parenting. Okay. So in this little parenting area, you've got these little things called pick whips. And in order to parent one thing to another, you use the pick whip. One really useful thing when parenting is to use a null object. A null object is basically an empty nothing. We're going to go to Layer, New, Null Object. And this is what it looks like. It's a nothing designated by these 8 red dots. And it shows up right here. Where a null becomes useful is that, let's say we wanted to make everything in our composition bigger, but we wanted to change the size of everything in our composition. So let's highlight it all. And then we're just going to grab the size here, click on it, and if we make it bigger, you can see that everything is getting bigger and smaller on its own, but they're staying anchored to the same point. Let's undo that. Now let's try parenting all of these things to our null object so that they're all connected to the same thing. To do that, we grab the pick whip, on one of the three highlighted items and drag it up to our null. You can now see in the parenting window next to each of these layers that it says null 1. That means that null 1 is the parent of this layer. Now, if we, well, first of all, 3D needs to be toggled on the null. But once we twirl it down, let's see, we hit transform, and now we can scale the null itself, and you can see that everything is getting bigger and smaller together as a project, as a unit, which can be really useful. Let's undo it, put it back to where it was, and we don't really want these things connected to this null, so let's just delete it, and then nothing is parented. But let's say we wanted to bring a camera into our 3D composition so that we could not only view this from a stationary point of view, but we can kind of move around within the composition at will. So in order to do that, we'll go to Layer, New Camera. Ooh, and it has a lot of settings. The only thing I really mess with is I change it to 35 millimeters right here. And hit OK. You can spend all day changing these camera options down here later on if you're a camera whiz, but I am not. Those are some really complicated, it's a complicated way to do things, so I think the best way to control the camera is to create a null simply to attach the camera to. So let's create another null, Layer, New, Null Object. It's going to pop up on top of the camera. And the first thing we want to do is zoom out on our view, and you can see that our null object is right here, and the camera is up here. This is our camera. And this is like our viewfinder. This is the field of vision that the camera is seeing. The first thing we want to do is grab our null and pull it back. Oops, that's not how you do it. Grab our null, scroll it down, transform it, and we're going to move the position. First you got to toggle the 3D on for that null. And we're going to grab the z-axis of it and move it towards us. We're going to move it towards us until the null is right on top of the camera. Just like that. And now that we have that in place, we're going to highlight camera 1, and we're going to parent it with the pick whip tool to the null that we just created. What that does is it allows us to move this null and therefore the camera around in space. So from now on, we'll control this null right here. Let's say we want to begin it right here. So at the beginning, we're going to toggle on position, scale, no, not scale, I'm sorry. Position and rotation for all three, X, Y, and Z. Okay, now we move forward in time, and we want the camera to move away from us. So forward, towards our composition. So we grab Z, which will move, oops, that's the rotation for Z. Does that make sense? So that rotated our camera. You can see that our view is rotating as well. Let's undo it. I didn't mean to do that. And instead, we're going to toggle, we're going to add a keyframe over here for position. And then we grab the blue for Z and move it away from us so that the camera is zooming past all of this stuff. Oh, my mouse. Sorry about that. And again, we have these little red handles, so we can change the motion path like that. And again, that is the motion path of our camera, so it's still going to face forward, but it's going to move through space. And you can even see the end where the camera passes our background, which actually lies halfway through that little rectangle there. As we move it, let's also rotate it. Whoops, not like that. Well, let's see what it looks like. Whoa. It's not very interesting. There we go. Oops. Anyway, that gives you an idea of how to move cameras around and yada yada yada. If you use the null to move the camera around, it really helps later when you want to make fine adjustments within the camera settings itself. So anyway, hopefully this will help you if you run into problems at home, and see you in class.